Welcome to the amazing world of flexibility and stretching. Flexibility is key in many sports and physical activities. Think about it. American Ninja Warrior, parkour, gymnastics, dance, they all incorporate consistent flexibility. I'm Olympic gymnast Lance Ringnald, and today I want to show you the stretch routine I've been doing for over 30 years. Gymnastics is constantly pulling on our body. The more flexible we are, the more we can accommodate those pulls of gymnastics and not get injured, and even do the higher skills. For me, the most important things in flexibility are consistency. You can't just stretch for a while and then stop and take a break. You have to be consistent with your stretching. Make it fun. It should be like your morning tea or morning coffee. If you don't like it, you're not going to continue doing it. Couple rules of thumb. Flexibility will get worse before it gets better. When you start stretching, your body's not used to it, so the initial reaction is it'll tighten up. That's when a lot of people stop stretching because it's uncomfortable. If you work through that uncomfortable time, you will definitely reap the benefits of your flexibility, and that pain or discomfort will go away. Resistance stretching can be especially effective in improving flexibility. This technique involves contracting and relaxing the muscles while stretching to increase your range of motion. What this is to go as far down as you can that's pretty comfortable and have someone push down on you and push against them for 3 to 5 seconds. Then relax a little bit more and have them push a little bit harder, and your body will go down a little bit further. You can do this by yourself as well. You can push against the floor for 3 to 5 seconds or longer and relax. When I first start warming up, I actually keep my muscles loose. You can see here my leg is loose and tight. So the first round of flexibility I do is often loose just to get my body prepared to stretch properly. After I've stretched in those positions with loose muscles, I tighten my muscles. Let's say I want to learn the splits. I would work every position and aspect of the splits. I might focus on my front leg at first, make sure it's loose and then tight with good form and push it down to the ground. And then I might concentrate on my back leg, making sure I can keep it tight in good form and still stretch it. Slowly I would move closer to the split each day. To prevent injury while stretching, it's important to warm up before you start with any kind of stretch routine. Jogging, jump roping, jumping jacks, anything that gets the blood flowing. It's also important to listen to your body and avoid pushing yourself beyond your limits. After about a 5-minute run and doing some jumping jacks, I feel pretty warm, and then I get started. I start off with some body twists, or twisting my torso back and forth. I do this 8 times, and if you notice, my legs are bent on this version. After these 8 times, I do 8 more times with straight legs. At this point, I'm just making sure my body is pretty warm, getting my torso and my back pretty loosened up, getting ready for my stretch routine. I might circle my hips a little bit just to make sure that my body's warmed up and prepared to stretch. And now I get on the ground with one leg out to the side. I start with my knee facing up, then I put my knee forward, keeping my muscles loose the whole time. Then I've got this habit where I put my head on the ground and swing my torso 90 degrees. That just seems to stretch my body. I do this on the other side as well. Again, keeping my muscles loose, knee pointing to the ceiling, now pointing forward, head down on the ground, and swinging my torso those 90 degrees to stretch my back a little bit. Then I sit down in the straddle position. Now I just kind of get loosened up, prepared to stretch more intensely. My muscles are loose here. I specifically do 3 or 4 turns or twists like this. Here I'm just preparing to stretch more intensely, getting my body prepared. With loose muscles in my legs, I hit all the positions I'm about to stretch more intensely, making sure my body's ready. This routine has worked very well for me. I just simply enjoy it and feel much better after I do my stretch program. Then I put my chin on my right leg loosely for about 5 seconds. I turn my torso and put my shoulder on my knee. Then I move to the left side, chin on my knee with a loose leg. Then I turn my torso and try to put my shoulder on my knee. Now I'm prepared to stretch with proper form. I put my chin on my knee with a tight leg muscle, and I hold this for 5 seconds. And then I put my shoulder on my knee, keeping my leg muscle tight, and hold this 5 seconds. Then I raise my arm to the ceiling, and I hold this for 5 seconds with my ear to my leg and my arm reaching for the ceiling. Then we go to the left side. Chin down to the knee, tight muscle in the leg, and hold for 5 seconds. Then I put my shoulder on my knee and grab my foot and hold this position for 5 seconds. Then I reach for the sky with my shoulder still on my knee and hold this position for 5 seconds. Now I move on to my splits. I hold the splits for 20 seconds, but the first 5 seconds of my split are with loose muscles and almost bad form, just to prepare my body to stretch more intensely in the split. After the first 5 seconds, I tighten the muscles and try to maintain perfect form throughout the split. I may turn my torso and make sure I'm stretching all aspects of the split, but generally it's about 20 seconds for a split. I do this on both sides as well. Put my left leg forward. The first 5 seconds are pretty loose and comfortable, just preparing to stretch more intensely. and the last 15 seconds to be with tight legs and perfect form, with slight movements to make sure you're hitting all the aspects of that split. It's important to stay still for at least some time. You don't want to fidget too much. Gymnastics is constantly pulling and pushing on the body. The more flexible we are, the more we can accommodate the demands of the more difficult skills and avoid injury. In between splits, I'm often doing pancakes or a center split, putting my chest forward a little bit. This is preparing me for my center split. Now I'm pretty naturally flexible in the center split, and I know some people aren't, so take it a little bit slower if you're tight in this position. Once again in my center split, I start with loose muscles and relaxed body, and move into perfect form, tight muscles, and proper stretching of the center split. I will pancake or put my chest completely on the ground, so I simply move into my center split for about 15 to 20 seconds. After my pancake, I do an upright split and make sure I feel pretty loose and comfortable in my center split. I do slide my butt forward and backward to make sure I'm hitting all angles of the split. Then I move into my pancake split with my legs a little bit closer. After I've stretched all my splits for about 20 seconds, I simply do all my splits again, and I make sure that they feel pretty stretched out. If I feel a bit tight that day, I may stretch for a little bit longer, but if I'm loose, I'll move on to my next stretching exercise. Now I move into my sill stretch. I get on my tummy and I push my chest up from the ground and move back and forth a little bit. This just stretches my lower back. There are many ways to stretch your lower back, but this has always been my habit. I move my torso side to side to stretch both sides of my lower back. Then I move onto my side to stretch one side, just moving around a little bit, making sure I'm warm. I switch sides, stretch out the other side, pushing it down to the ground as much as I can, but still being comfortable. Just making sure my lower back and my sides are pretty well stretched out. Now I sit on my ankles like this, kind of do punches to stretch out my torso. This is a little bit like the torques I started out with, or turning my body. Now I pull my toes back to stretch my toe point. And now I put my knees on the ground to stretch my quads. I alternate between stretching my toe point and stretching out my quads and my legs. It's a very simple stretch. Then I just do a couple squats to kind of get my knees prepared or warmed up. At this point, I always kick up to a handstand to get my blood flowing and get the body prepared to continue stretching. When I lower down from the handstand, I start focusing on my pike stretch. Now I will straighten one leg and bend it, and then straighten the other leg and bend it. This is just preparation to stretch my pike stretch properly. I might kick up to a handstand a couple times and kind of loosen up my back, but this is all just getting loosened up, making sure everything feels good. You should know your body's strength and weaknesses, and this will help you decide how much time to put into each stretching exercise. Then I go back to my pike position sitting down and put my chest on my knees and hold my pike position for a while. I also like to stretch out my neck at this time and roll it around. I'm still just generally making sure my body is warmed up. Then I stretch out my neck a little bit. I just hold it to each side for a few seconds, make sure it's warm. Again, if I feel cold or tight, I'll spend some more time stretching these, but if I'm warmed up, I'll move on to the next stretch. How my body feels before stretching has a lot to do with how much time I spend on each stretching exercise. Then I move into my bridge. Now don't laugh at this. I don't do bridges near as often as I should, but it's a great full body and back stretch everybody should do if they can. After my bridge, I roll up my back a little bit, just making sure it's all stretched out and feels good. Every body is different, so you might need to stretch out some different parts of your body more than other people. This routine has worked very well for me. It's helped me maintain my flexibility and even gain flexibility. And then I move on to stretching my wrists. Now I've got a funny way to stretch my wrists. I always like to put my knees on top of my wrists and lean back and forward and stretch them. It's just something I got in the habit to do, and it seems to stretch my wrists out very well. Then I do a few in and outs with my chest, kind of just stretching out my torso. Many of these small exercises are just to make sure I'm getting warmed up in general, to make sure my whole body feels like it's warming up. Then I roll out my ankles a little bit just to make sure they're warmed up, prepare me for running and tumbling and punching. Pretty simple. If something feels a little bit tight, I might take a little more time and stretch that position a little bit more. Then I like to kick to a 10-second long handstand. This has just become a ritual for me. In gymnastics, we do a lot of handstands, so it's always good to warm up with a handstand or few during your stretch. Then I lean back, just monitor my body, make sure it feels like it's warming up properly. Then I move on to my shoulders, where I go side to side, pulling my arm behind my head, just preparing my shoulders to be stretched more intensely. Now I like to use a broomstick or a pole to stretch out my shoulders. You can see here I go side to side, just like I did with my hands. I also do inlocates and dislocates with the stick. Now I'm not literally dislocating or inlocating my shoulders. It's what we call it in gymnastics, but I move them forward and backward, and each time I move my hands a little bit closer just to stretch my shoulders a little bit more intensely. It always helped me to lift my head a little bit as I inlocated. Then I turn the stick around and I do it with reverse grip. Once again, going forward and backward with your shoulders, each time moving your hands a little bit closer, just making sure they're getting stretched out properly. Here's another stretch I do. I just hold the stick behind me and lift it up to stretch my shoulder. I do this on each side. You can also use a jump rope or bungee cord for the shoulder stretch as well. This is another reason why it's so important to feel warmed up and loose before you start stretching. I also like to hang from a bar and stretch my shoulders. Just go back and forth in the hang, each time moving my hands closer, working my shoulders in and out, dislocate and inlocate. As a gymnast, we use our shoulders in very large ranges of motion, so I take a little extra time to warm up my shoulders, and this also helps it to be more comfortable for me. Now I do my Achilles. I like to raise up on my toe and then go deeper into the Achilles stretch. I alternate going back and forward, just moving around my ankle to make sure my Achilles is stretched properly. This drill is more injury prevention. You'll see gymnasts do this a lot, where they take a bungee or surgical tubing and do these basic drills to strengthen the rotator cuff. Because we use our shoulders so often, this is a very common drill that a lot of gymnasts do. Now this drill is more like an exercise than a stretch. Most of my stretches are static or still, but I like to finish up my stretch routine with a couple dynamic stretches. These are stretches that move through faster movements. I focus on form and hitting the ideal position in these stretches. Here I show you dynamic stretching for my splits. If you found this video helpful and like to see more skills or more programs, please like and subscribe to my channel. Also leave in the comments what else you might like me to teach or demonstrate. It feels good to warm up and be able to move properly and freely. Nothing in your routine should be painful to where you don't want to do it again. Make stretching fun. Enjoy the process. When you enjoy it, it's easy to do every day, and it feels good to feel good. All the best. Keep enjoying what you do. We always learn better when we're having fun. See you soon.